Welcome back. Today we're talking to Owen Crisp. Owen's got a practitioner background, and it's really diverse in that it spans from marketing with large organizations to smaller organizations. And he's also seen both sides in terms of the digital side, social media, etc., as well as the analog side. And welcome to the show, Owen.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Owen, when I think of terms of marketing, there is the social media digital side of it, and digital expands, of course, beyond social media. There is the potential to market in, let's say, video games, as well as the traditional analog side, such as billboards. And part of the difference of these channels is the goals that we want to accomplish. So if we look at Twitter versus Facebook, there are different things we can accomplish on each channel. And traditionally, marketers will look at the channel and say, this may be the channel best suited for real-time response, or this channel may be better for social discussion and dialogue between customers, potential customers, and the organization. So each channel strategically can be very different, and as well as the metrics that we look at, as well as the experience on the side of the customer or potential customer and the organization. And you've had some experiences yourself with choosing and using these different channels. But let's first start off with one question, and that question is out there in the world in terms of organizations that are using the various channels, what is their sense of what's working and what's not working? What are the metrics? Do you have any success stories or stories that don't work well? And what are some of the best practices that we can get from that?
Okay, so coming back to the initial question, which is how do what I'll call consumer packaged goods companies or CPGs view the digital world? They know, first and foremost, one, that advertising works. And when you're a huge brand, they will go after awareness as their number one priority. Their messaging tends not to be specific. So if you were to take a look at somebody like Red Bull, they would be the premier company in terms of going after the experience of getting their brand out there, whether it be with cracked ice, whether it be the parachuter jumping out well above the surface of the earth. It doesn't matter what it is. They're after awareness. The one thing that I believe marketers are not doing as effectively within this digital world is realizing all they have, first and foremost, is a billboard. If you picture yourself logging into a site, so I use an investment site, let's say, and I know that I'm going to be going in there and I'm going to be pulling out information. There are three different billboards that are facing me, and I boom through those just like you would boom through and fast forward a traditional recorded television show. So the marketers have to understand that they're using a billboard, whether it's an outdoor billboard or it's an online billboard. There's very little time to communicate. You have to be effective as people are in and out of that digital medium as fast as can be. The CPG companies know and understand that, and that's why you will not find them out there in the traditional initial world of advertising as it was on the internet, which is basically doing the top or the sides or whatever it happens to be. They have clearly accepted the importance of, one, having a website. Now, that today may be, maybe a little understated, but the importance of a website is, hey, we get to communicate all kinds of information, and they have now started to come to understand the importance of content. and relevant content and exciting content. And again, I'll go back to Red Bull. They're the best at content. They're content producers. And if we were to jump back to the 50s, what we would find in the 50s is the soap manufacturers, the Procter and Gamble's of the world, they were content providers. That's why they were called soap operas. They physically produced those in order to put their advertising in. Well, that's what's happening today within the world of YouTube. People are creating content and they're trying to log their product into that messaging. Sometimes they're not as successful, other times they are successful. So within the digital world, consumer packaged goods companies, who are seen to be in many cases the best in one way because they have to sell millions of units versus other people which can sell thousands of units if they're priced a whole lot more. They understand that the digital world of Facebook can be important to them if people are going to come and want to interact. They are probably going to spend less time in the Twitterverse because it is such a high maintenance area and what they have is not newsworthy. So, you want to understand the different vehicle based on the messaging of that vehicle and how you as the advertiser can use that vehicle for you. And as an example that James, we had talked about before, within the last year, Procter & Gamble has reduced the amount of spending they put into the digital world by $500 million. Now that's a huge number. $500 million less in the digital world within having to spend that money out there because they're not sure the value that they're getting, and they measure everything.
Well, and when you alluded to using some of the digital media in terms of awareness, and when I think of the way that the marketing works, there is the need recognition, there is the consumer's awareness of options. There's also the decision criteria that they need to know about. I mean, why would, if we look at a product, what attributes of the product should be most important or prioritized? Then there's the search or the evaluation stage. Then there's the purchase and the post-purchase behavior. So I'm thinking in terms of organizations using either traditional or digital marketing, and they must have metrics along each one of those stages to view this as maybe a funnel or a pipeline of starting from the beginning and all the way. With the examples that you've given, such as Red Bull and their awareness, how would they measure the results? Would it be very short-term things? How many clicks? How many eyeballs? Or would it be longer-term things such as the overall awareness and perception that people have about the brand?
Well, a company like Red Bull, James, would see the world out there as they have no competition. That's the way they would view it. They're the monsters and everything else, but they were the leader. They were the number one. They're the ones who are out there, and they have to keep the messaging exciting, and they would measure that. In other words, they would, after having run the gentleman who skydove from, I don't know, 50,000, 500,000 feet, whatever it was, at the outer edge of the atmosphere, they would want to know how many people physically went to the site. Now, that's what in the traditional world one would call awareness. Well, everybody was aware of it. I mean, it's almost like Tiger Woods. Has anybody not heard of Tiger Woods? No, everybody's heard of Tiger Woods. Well, what's the relevance of having Tiger Woods as a part of your brand? So with Red Bull, they would first measure the number of people there. The bottom line with every consumer packaged goods and every business, James, has to be, are my sales going up? And we tend to work in a marketing world more, as I said to you earlier, as a troubleshooter. What are the problems and what can we do to resolve them? So your first measure is awareness. Whether you're running an ad on Facebook or whatever, are people responding to me? Are people checking into my website? What is my website traffic like? Where are they going to on my website? What are they doing while they're in on my website? All of those measures would be there, and their digital advertising agency would be combing through all that and providing them with information to tell them what to do next. Within the outside world, whether it's, billboard advertising or television advertising or radio advertising or podcast advertising, the CPG companies, I think, are now going to, again, start to realize they're going to have to become content providers as they were a half a century ago. They're going to have to get out there and provide content. Does content work? Absolutely. I can give you a specific example that's the best A/B test case you could possibly imagine. Now, I'll cut there. James, do you want me to put that in, or do you want me to just stop there?
Now, Owen, what I'd like to do is explore this idea of metrics in a little more detail. So what we've got is think of it as a set of possibilities. We could just simply provide information. We could provide, as you alluded to, content, and then content connected to as experiences. So the content itself could be informative, or it could be based around emotional experiences, or it could be based around other emotional appeals, such as people want to be associated with this brand because of its image. For example, Apple. But when I think of the metrics again, you talked about metrics, some of which are still very objective and short term. But we know in marketing, there's always the lag effect of somebody sees an advertisement, but they may not act on it until sometime in the future. And then how do we know that the decision that they've made is based on what they've seen in the past, what they've seen recently, what they've talked about with other people? So how do we take into effect this lag effect in our metrics, as well that when people make a decision, it's a composite of what they're seeing, what they're talking with other people, maybe the mood that they're in that day? How do we bring all of that in?
Well, it's tough. There's no other word for it. It is something that is very difficult to do. You have to know that they talk about the 6 degrees of separation, or it takes 7 steps in order to fully connect with somebody, and that's ultimately what it is. And manufacturers today understand that this is not a short-term put it up and you're going to get the sale today. So content is critical, but the content has to also be relevant, James. And that's one of the problems with a lot of what's out there today. When you used to talk about putting your website up and hope that people were going to come to you or stumble upon you, and that's what a lot of people still do today. The reality is the internet is a house full of telephone books, and how are you going to find one unless you can get on one of those search engines and get up to the top? But that's why those search engines have placed such significant importance on content, and the content in the importance of being relevant is absolutely crucial. You can't fool them on content. You have to be the owner of the content. You have to believe the content, and being a marketer is the ability to step outside of yourself and onto the other side of the desk or the counter or the purchase decision and go, what would I need to know? What would I like? I'm going to ask those questions and make sure that my content reflects that as best it possibly can. And if it reflects that as best as it possibly can, it will grow and things will happen. The experience, what's it going to be like to be there? Well, the old adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Absolutely, the picture is going to deliver far more than words. Or when you're writing, understanding the importance of ease of reading. And people still don't get that today. I see blocks and blocks on LinkedIn. You'll see blocks of copy that people are posting. And to expect I'm going to read that, forget it. It's too hard. Make it easy for me. Back in the early 1900s, one of the earliest of advertisers said, I know I'm wasting half my money. Today, it is probably the same. You know you're wasting a lot of money. You're going to continue to test, and these manufacturers do continue to test throughout the process. And where they fall down, James, and the most important part of that is they don't follow up afterwards. I do a lot of interaction with B2B companies. And those guys don't understand the importance of making that phone call afterwards. Or if it's a small business, a guy's running a little computer shop and he sold a piece of business. Has he followed up a week or two later to make sure that things are good? It's that part of the experience which is absolutely crucial. James, if these companies want to grow, they're always looking to new business. And what they don't recognize is the importance of your current customer and linking in with and talking to your current customer. So coming back to the emotional part of the experience that you were talking to, absolutely you want to make it emotional, and Apple's truly a unique and distinct brand out there. But unique and distinct brands don't stay on top for long if they don't listen to the customer. And it's all of that listening to the customer in the back end, which is so critically important. They have to understand what that feedback is through this digital age. So if you're running a business and you want to know and understand what's going on with your customer, read your reviews, respond to your reviews, understand what the reviewer is trying to say. Once you've got all that, then you're going to continue to see the sale. But in terms of the 7 or 8 or 9 stages it may take the customer to go through, we would like to say as marketers we know the answer, but we don't.
Oh, and I'd like to ask you one last question before we get to some takeaways. When you were talking about relevancy of content to the user or the viewer, I was wondering how would we know that? For example, we could go do some demographic segmentation and say, well, people of this age group might find this relevant, but demographic segmentation is not really reliable, and we might look in terms of usage or other behavioral characteristics. So when an organization is putting together content, how do they categorize people in terms of relevancy, or those that would find this relevant?
Demographics are just simply your starting point. Psychographics are and have been a part of the advertising and creative process. The problem back when I started in the business was the media wasn't able to tell you what the psychographics were. You were only buying demos. You were only buying 18 to 49s. You were only buying, 65 plus. That was what was going on. So, you have to understand who that user is. But the best of these digital agencies are always in touch with and know what's going on. If they, you have to take the step beyond what they are. You have to understand who they are and what motivates them. And what you have to begin to tally up is, what are the motivating forces? And that's where the after effect of sales, which you've already got in the pipeline, you go back and you talk to those people and you begin to adjust your messaging to make sure that it is relevant to those people. Because putting down a demographic or putting down a psychographic is really used so much more for the creative people to begin to write things. But if you can take that next step beyond that and provide them with the actual words that they're using, things that are important to them, which is what Google search does, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to find those meaningful words. What are people doing? Long chain search words are simply, I'm sitting at my computer and going, I want to find which car will do X, Y, Z, and do it for this value and whatever. If you have provided that long chain within your website or your communication, then you're going to pop up on page 1, which is what you want to do.
Thanks, Owen. And do you have one takeaway that either on the practical side or more on the theoretical side that we can have?
Absolutely. One of the things that I promoted more than anything else, and it goes back to Rosser Reeves in the 50s and the 60s, is the importance of the unique selling proposition in your brand or your business. A unique selling proposition is not a tagline. A unique selling proposition is something which differentiates you from everybody else, and or a unique segmentation within your marketplace. I see brands, I have no idea what they're doing. They're missing a message. They've basically gone fishing without any bait on the line. So my messaging out to all of the people within the world of marketing is, you're doing yourself a disservice wherever your billboard ad, your outdoor ad, your block ad on the website is to have your brand name and have your position. So now I know who you are. Marketing is a problem solution game, and it is very simple at its core.
Okay, thank you, Owen. That was Owen Crisp today. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, James. And if anybody's interested, I try and make this whole process very simplified for everybody at a website called marketinguncomplicated.com. Have a visit.
Okay, thank you.